Okay, so if you have a Canon R5C and you think there's a magical firmware update somewhere that's going to get CLog2 on this camera, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but don't hold your breath because honestly, it's never coming, guys. Oh, hey, do me a favor. If you found this video useful in any way, shape, or form, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. It is so hard to keep the YouTube channel going these days, and your subscriptions are the only thing that keeps this channel going. Now, I recently did a video on the firmware update 1.0.5.1, I think it is, for the Canon R5C that truly unlocks so much of what we wanted in this camera. The tap to focus, so many other features, just fantastic in here. But what really blew me away is in the comments of the last video, I had so many people out there disappointed that they weren't seeing CLog2 in a firmware update here on the Canon R5C. And I gotta be honest, if you are getting the Canon R5C and if you are waiting for a firmware that's gonna put CLog2 in this camera, I have to tell you, that's almost never going to happen. I just don't think that's very realistic. I want to talk about why that is in case this is something that you're really holding out for and hoping to upgrade on your Canon R5C. Now, before I get into these reasons, I do want to point out too, I know there are hacks out there that will let you get CLog2 from the Canon R5C. Like for instance, if you're exporting RAW up to an external recorder or a monitor, you can set it to CLog2. But all those things don't really increase the dynamic range of this camera. They're kind of hacks, they're kind of ways to cheat the log curve and stuff, but you don't get that CLog2 dynamic range. I think that's important to point out because while there are hacks, we're talking about getting real CLog2 in the R5C like we have in, say, the R5 Mark II. Now, there are two major reasons if you have an R5C that, in my opinion, you are never, ever going to realistically see CLog2 in the R5C. The first reason is this is the R5C. It shares, obviously, the same sensor as the Canon R5. Now, the R5 came out in July of 2020, and at this point in time, Canon really had no plans whatsoever to ever include CLog2 on any mirrorless camera. As a matter of fact, if you remember, when the R5 came out, it didn't even have CLog3. We had to wait for a firmware update to get CLog3, and we were all ecstatic once the Canon R5 actually got CLog3. And what that kind of tells me is that at its heart, even though there's been some tweaking to the R5C versus the R5, the sensor on this camera, it was just never designed from the ground up to ever really effectively capture CLog2. I think that's a very, very important thing to understand about the hardware of this camera. But all that being said, I actually think there's a second reason that is much, much more telling and letting you know that CLog2 is never coming to this camera. And that is, back in March of 2023, Canon released a firmware update for this, a 1.0.3.1 update that was targeted specifically to improve CLog3 in XF-AVC mode on this camera. Now, this tweak is very, very important understanding why the R5C will probably never be getting CLog. You see, this firmware update, Canon tweaked the CLog3 algorithm to get it Netflix approved. That means that they went in there, tweaked this thing up to meet the dynamic range standards required by Netflix to be registered as an officially approved Netflix camera, and it also brought it up in line, even shooting CLog3 on this, to get it online with its other cinema cameras. Now, if you just look at this, what this tells you is that Canon spent a considerable amount of time pushing the physical limitations of the Canon R5C sensor to its absolute limit. And I just find it really telling that while the lack of CLog2 is what kept the R5C off the Netflix list initially, in order to get the technical badge, what Canon chose to do is to tweak the CLog3 settings rather than add CLog2, which tells you right there that CLog2 is probably beyond what this sensor can handle. So I think if you put all those things together, it just really paints a very realistic picture that we're not going to be seeing CLog2 on the Canon R5C. And I think that's okay. I mean, like I said, this CLog3 is still Netflix approved. It's still designed to match up with the cinema lines of the C300s, 400s, 500s, you name it. It will be great to have that extra dynamic range of the CLog2. I'm not going to deny that. But I do think the CLog3 in this R5C is the best CLog3 you're probably going to find anywhere because of how it was tweaked. And if you're shooting, I think for 99% of everything you shoot, this is still going to get you a fantastic image. But anyway, guys, I just wanted to make that video because I got so many comments about CLog2 on this camera. I just felt like I might as well put my 2 cents in there and just let you know, if you really want this in the Canon R5C, yeah, you're going to be waiting for a really long time because I don't think it's ever coming. Anyway, guys, love to hear what you have to say about this. Leave me notes and comments down below. And yeah, go out there, keep on shooting. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon.